Hello, bonjour, and welcome to your new RT1 Exchange video. Welcome to this channel where we explore, together we learn about and we taste the wonderful world of wine. If you're not familiar with the RT1 Exchange, it is a wine investment and trading platform as well as a wine club. Make sure to check out the link in the video description to learn more about it. It's worth it. Today, we're continuing our exploration of all the best wines produced in the sunny and ancient country of Spain, with a region that is probably covered in vineyards even more than many others on the Iberian Peninsula, in an area that makes some of the finest wines in the country, even though the name of the region itself may not sound that familiar to most outside of Spain. To you, perhaps. We're talking about the fantastic wines of Castilla y Leon, around such historically significant cities of Valladolid and Salamanca. Valladolid was once the capital city of Castilla, if not Spain, and Salamanca counts with one of the oldest universities in the entire world. Yes, just to name a couple of facts illustrating how this area is important in the history of Spain. Between those cities, the vineyards that covers most landscapes here are also extremely significant in the Spanish wine culture, especially those of the almighty Ribera del Duero. Basically, arguably the best wines made in the country, even though you may not have heard about them all that much. So let's change this right now and find out what Ribera del Duero is all about, a name you need to know about and remember. Let's go. On the international wine scene, as far as Spanish wines go, the region called Ribera del Duero has somewhat been overshadowed by Rioja, but go to Spain and everyone, absolutely everyone who knows a little bit about wine, knows about this prestigious wine region flanking the Duero River. The name Ribera del Duero actually means the banks of the Duero, which is a long river that flows all the way down to the city of Oporto in Portugal through the famous Douro Valley. You would have heard about. Douro and Duero are one and the same river, one with the Portuguese name and the Spanish name for it, respectively. Basically, both the most thought after and the most expensive of all Spanish wines, which are two different wines by two different producers, are from the Ribera del Duero, not from Rioja, which is telling about how high the quality can get here. We'll get back to those two cult bodegas and talk about top wineries there in just a minute, but let me give you a little bit of a context first. Ribera del Duero is located just a little southwest of Rioja, really not far at all in fact, and the wines here are like in Rioja, based on the delicious Tempranillo grape. But the Ribera is a little higher in altitude and more inland, so we have a more continental climate here with huge heat in summer, say 40 degrees Celsius or 100 plus degrees Fahrenheit, while the altitude at around 700 to 800 meters, 2,500 feet or so, makes that the wines still stay fresh and fragrant because the altitude tempers a little bit the high temperatures, especially in summer. The area is essentially sheltered from any oceanic influence by two Sierra mountain ranges to the north that protect it from the Atlantic Ocean. So the climate is extreme here on this rather high altitude plateau, typical of the Spanish Castilla region. This elevated Castilian plateau, which occupies essentially the whole center of Spain, is known to the Spanish as the meseta. Understand, the little table, and the Ribera is the start of it to the north, the start of the heart of the Castilian culture. This is where Ribera is. Essentially, I'd say that the Ribera del Duero wines are slightly bigger, more tannic wines than Rioja. Wines are more concentrated, generally speaking, with very vibrant berry fruit flavors to them. There's less emphasis in Ribera on long oak aging as well than in Rioja, and French oak is usually preferred here to American oak. So wines here are very dense, very fruity as well, but also very deep and balanced. Not too dissimilar to Bordeaux wines, in fact, I would say, but with the meatiness, the Spanish spiciness from Tempranillo to them that we love. Say, a more tannic, denser version of Rioja. The most thought after and probably the most famous of all Spanish wine, especially famous in Spain, Rioja wines tend to be more famous outside of Spain. The most famous of all Spanish wines is a wine called Vega Sicilia Único, a legend of a wine, as I said, probably the most famous of all Spanish wines, at least if you ask Spanish people. So you have to know about it. It sells at around $500 a bottle and can age for decades, gaining incredible intensity, complexity over time, really the equivalent of a Grand Cru of Bordeaux, blended from the best vineyards of a rather large estate, incredible consistency year on year, a true grand vin. The most expensive Spanish wine is also from the Ribera and called Dominio de Pingus, or simply Pingus, and sells north of $1,000 a bottle. This is a smaller project and producer made from extremely old vines, a wine of incredible concentration and density. It gained cult status in the mid-1990s following rave reviews from Robert Parker. They only produce around 6,000 plus bottles per year, which are extremely hard to get by. You don't find that wine very easily at all, very scarce, very rare, very expensive. This is somewhat of the Spanish Petrus, if you wish, while Vega Sicilia is more like a left bank chateau of Bordeaux, like Chateau Lafite Rothschild, bigger estate, fantastic quality as well, but bigger project. Just to give you an image, a comparative image with Bordeaux. Following those leading chateaus, the Ribera del Duero counts with countless fantastic bodegas, many of which are extremely reputable, also extremely famous, especially in Spain. For some of the names you should investigate, bodega names any connoisseur should really know about. Spanish connoisseurs will know them very well. Make sure to check out the bodegas Alto, the Pago de Carraovejas, the Dominio de la Águila, the Hacienda Monasterio, the Pago de los Capellanes, or Bodegas Emilio Moro. Two names of rather large wineries you may have come across in your wine life, probably because it's some of the most represented globally, the most commonly found around the world, Bodegas Protos and Tinto Pesquera. Both make relatively affordable wines from the area for a taste of what the region is like, to find out whether you like the style or not, to get a feel for what the Ribera del Duero wines are. Check out those two names, but those two also make higher end cuvées, of course, from the best vineyards on their estates. But those two I'd recommend to see whether you like the style of Ribera, and if you do, well, go for some of the previous names that I mentioned, some of the top producers. And so this exceptional concentration of top producers in one single region in the Ribera is not a coincidence, of course, but rather related to an exceptional terroir, exceptionally suited to Tempranillo and to making high-end wines from it. Soils vary between limestone, some chalky parts, marl and clay deposited over millions of years by the Duero River in this large valley within which lies the Ribera del Duero area. It's essentially like a large ancient canyon in this area with different deposits all around it. This variety of terroir helps with the complexity and balance of blends. Somewhat again like in Bordeaux, wineries have access to different qualities of soils and therefore different styles of wine that they can blend together to reach perfect balance. More acidity and grape here from chalk for example, more opulence and tannic density on clay soils, and so on. Combining those characteristics, often from very old vines, the area doesn't lack of bodegas can craft year after year incredible age-worthy wines, always with great balance and consistency. Beyond Tempranillo, which generally represents at least 75% of blends, bodegas use a little Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Malbec, and even a little Grenache, which all helps adding complexity and perfecting blends more and more. More blending components. What else do you need to know? Well, yes, Tempranillo is locally called Tinto Fino, meaning the fine red wine, rather than Tempranillo, which is more of the Rioja name for the grape. Occasionally you might hear locals call it Tinta del País, meaning the red grape from the land. In essence, these were all the top facts that you had to know about Ribera del Duero, an exceptional terroir, very old vines, extreme climate, bodegas that have perfected their know-how, their savoir-faire, the knowledge of their varied soils for decades and decades, consistently improving quality to end up today with extremely fine and consistent wines, really some of the finest wines on the planet, for sure, let alone from Spain. Not all that famous and renowned on the global stage, but now you know. And on this final note, I'll leave it here for today. Make sure to stay tuned and subscribe to the channel to continue together our journey of learning more about all the finest vinos on earth. I will see you soon in the wonderful world of wine. Hasta luego. Salud.